Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Theater on the Web series. I'm your host, Mr. Hillary, the theater guy, and I'm excited to be bringing this next episode to you. Today's episode is very important because we're going to be using the skill that we learned today on pretty much many episodes to come. So today's episode is all about the self-tape. Stay tuned, it's going to be a good one. So this idea of the self-tape, where did it come from? Like, what is it about? And why is it important to me as a theater artist? I thought theater was supposed to be something live that's happening in front of you. I know you may be asking yourself all of these questions about the self-tape, but the self-tape has actually been around for a while. I mean, we've been recording theater for as long as we had the ability to do so. And so this idea of using recording in the theater, it's not such a stretch, and has actually been happening for a very long time when it comes to auditioning and being ready to be in any type of performance nowadays. I remember back in when I first was getting started, self-tapes were not as big of a deal, but now they really are, because the world has become so much more global, and casting directors and directors and talent scouts, whoever they may be, they're not just subjected to picking talent right where they are. Nowadays, people are using talent anywhere and everywhere around the globe. And so sometimes the best way to see talent, at least initially, is through the idea of the self-tape. Now, we're going to be using the self-tape a lot in our classroom because we have a digital classroom. So what an opportunity we have today to really look at this idea of a self-tape, how we're going to use it in Theater on the Web series, and how it's used in the theater just presently, and how you can really find your niche in doing a self-tape and really book things. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, this idea of the self-tape. So here's some things to think about when we're talking about putting ourselves on a self-tape. First of all, what is a self-tape? Well, it's a tape of yourself that you make. And usually when we're talking about the theater, it's a tape of you doing some type of performance. So you're gonna actually film yourself doing acting, you're gonna film yourself doing. And that's what's gonna be on your self-tape. Now, self-tapes can be any and everything that they want to see in an audition. Usually, some person from casting will reach out to you, or from your agent if you're lucky enough to have one of those working for you, and they'll send you some material and they'll say, "Hey, put this on the tape." And so that's what you'll do, and you'll just put yourself acting on the tape. Today, we're not going to get so much into the acting of what we're going to be putting on the tape. But what we're really going to focus on is this idea of the slate. The slate is pretty much an introduction of yourself before you start working on your piece. So we're going to start our episodes with just creating this idea of the slate. So when we're making a slate, what you're going to do is you're just going to say a few things. You're going to say your name, first and last, and you're going to say Theater on the Web series, and then you're going to say monologue 1. So you're going to say your name, first and last, then you're going to say Theater on the Web series, and then you're going to say monologue 1. That's all we're going to do. That's going to be our criteria for what we're going to say in our self-tape. Now, here's a little tip about your self-tape and you're creating it. So when you're creating the self-tape and you're doing your slate, when you do your slate, that's really the only time in the whole video of yourself that you really get to be you. Because usually when you're doing a self-tape, you're creating a character, you're being something else. So it's really the only time that the casting people and the people watching your tape get to see you. So if you're a smart actor, if you're thinking marketing myself, you got to think about, how can I be most like myself on this self-tape? So the casting people and people watching will actually be really interested in me, as well as the character I'm about to portray next on the self-tape. So be smart. Whenever you're doing your self-tape, remember, it should be you on camera when you're doing those things. So don't do it so stiff like a robot, you know. I remember when I was first doing my first self-tapes, I was a little robotic and like stiff. But the more you do them, like with anything, with practice, you get so much better at it. But nobody can beat you than you. And nobody can be you but you. And so no matter what character you're going to create or whatever you're going to do on the self-tape, remember that it's you that they really want to cast. And so that slate is an opportunity, if you use it correctly, for them to see just a little bit of you that just sparks them just enough to be like, oh, I love that person. And then they can act too. Oh, I love what they're doing. Oh, great. Let's bring them in. So then you can actually go in to the audition and to be seen. Because that's really the whole point of the self-tape. It's not just to be filming yourself. It's to get a job. It's to get the role. And to get that, at some point in the role, in the process of auditioning, you're going to have to get in the room. And so that self-tape is like your window, your opportunity to get in the door. And so what's going to get you in the door is your amazing yourself. You're going to get yourself in that door. So remember, no matter what you're doing, to be yourself. I remember that from one of my favorite musicals, the Aladdin. He says, be yourself. Be yourself in that slate. That's going to be like really important as we're doing this work. So today's assignment is very, very simple, and it's just doing the slate part. Eventually, we're going to be adding on to it and doing the full self-tape. But for today's assignment, I want us to get really, really good at just doing that initial introduction called the slate. And so when you do that, you're going to say first your name, first and last. And then you're going to say theater on the web series. And last, you're going to say monologue 1. So it's name, first and last, then theater on the web series, and then monologue 1. And that's what you're gonna do to practice. And you're just gonna put that much on tape. Now here's a little trick and a little tip about doing that much, okay? Don't forget, the slate needs to be about you. It needs to show a little bit of yourself in that self-tape. That's very, very important. Don't be a robot. I think I said that already. Don't be a robot. Make sure you're being yourself when you're creating this first part, the slate. And also, don't get so caught up with yourself when it comes to how many times you do it, or they call it takes, like how many times it takes you to do it, okay? Your takes. I would say don't do more than 4 or 5. Like once you get past 5, like stop. You're going too much. Because the truth of the matter is, you want it to seem spontaneous. Even though what you're doing is kind of pre-recorded and you practice it before you put it on the tape, which you should do that if you didn't do that. Practice it first and then put it on tape. But it should really be like yourself on the camera that you're doing, and it should be spontaneous. And so I feel like once you get to like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 takes, the work begins to get a little stale. So I would say try to be as ready for the recording. Like practice. You may practice like 20 times, but when you start the actual filming part, make sure you're really ready to do that. So you're gonna really catch the most spontaneous and the best version of yourself when you're doing that slate. And what you're gonna do, look at all of those versions that you do, the 4 or the 5 that you actually recorded, and you're gonna pick the best one. And that best one is what you're gonna submit to me on our Google Classroom. So you'll submit it to me. There'll be a folder that says self-tapes, and you'll just drop your work into that folder, okay? So I look forward to seeing these self-tapes, and depending on how they go along, it's gonna determine what we're gonna be doing next and the next feedback I will give, okay? So that's what we're doing. Self-tape and what? The slate. So when you're first getting started making your self-tape, the first thing you're gonna do is find a neutral place in wherever you are to start recording. So you're gonna look around your place and you're gonna find something that's like this, neutral background, so nothing that's kind of distracting from what you're gonna be presenting on the camera. So that's the first thing. And you also wanna make sure at that time your lighting is good, that you can really see yourself in the camera, so that you can get the best video possible. So that's the first thing. So make sure your background is A-okay. So also don't forget to send me comments. Let me know what you're thinking about theater on the web. Also tell me, like, this is some things we like to talk about. This is something I'm always curious about. I'm taking new ideas as we are building this show, and I want to learn from you. Like, I think any good classroom is not just run by the host, the teacher, it's also run by the students that are participating. So it's very important that you send feedback, drop a comment on our Google Classroom or in my comment section on IsraelRHillary.com. And I'm here to be able to do that for you. So let's make sure that we're doing those things, and I'm looking forward to seeing your self-tapes and your slates, and we'll take that on, and we'll see you all again very soon. This concludes another episode of Theater on the Web series. For more information, feel free to contact me using my contact page at IsraelRHillary.com. Fill out all the information and join our Google Classroom. That way you'll have access to all of our links, all of our videos, and all of our materials for this episode and episodes to come. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Israel R. Hillary, Theater on the Web series, Monologue 1.